Greetings, family. We are happy that you are with us for this 35th edition of God is Not White, your program that airs every Wednesday at 7 p.m. My name is Jafrikayiti, and it is an immense pleasure for me to be with you this evening. As usual, we're going to have a program with slide presentation and all kinds of discussions. And as you might have seen, the theme today is Trump bought a seat in heaven. I prefer my eternity anywhere else. Now, that's my personal statement. It would be interesting to see how you react to the idea that Donald Trump uh, bought a seat in heaven. We are introducing the topic tongue in cheek um, because it is kind of ironic, uh, but it is a very serious matter when you consider how many of us are religious and have a sense of wonderment about the afterlife. And it would seem that even men like Donald Trump are not immune to the idea that, okay, when the sun sets, what shall be my fate? Um, okay, so for those of you who are familiar with the program know that we deal with the relationship that people of African descent have with Judeo Christianity. And the concept of the afterlife, as you know, is also part of Judeo Christian faith. And in this particular case, we are contrasting the idea that Donald Trump, as we discussed in previous episodes, who is very much backed by what they call the white Christian nationalist in the US. Um, he also has this concept of the afterlife, and apparently, in recent weeks, have been very vocal about his desire to go to heaven. And as you know, what Donald Trump wants, Donald Trump usually gets by any means necessary. So consider it a warning to Mr. God here that, hey, the man wants to come and spend some time with you. Um, so let us see what this entails for us. And so the title, this is my own statement that if Donald Trump indeed bought a seat in heaven, I would much rather spend my eternity elsewhere, anywhere else. All right. In previous weeks, we discussed our own understanding of the concept of God and religion and how people of African descent have negotiated their relationship with the faith that most of us got acquainted with through the experience of the Mahafa, the Great Tribulation, when Africans were attacked by hordes of Europeans who kidnapped them and enslaved them and brought them to this side of the world called the Americas, and some of us to Europe. Um, but in any case, we also discussed, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which is through a different type of socialization became Christian. However, for the bulk of humanity as we know it in 2025, the clash of civilizations is how we got introduced to Judeo Christianity. So tonight, we are going to spend two different times looking at the idea of Trump being concerned about securing a seat in heaven. We will contrast this desire by Trump with the historical dialogue between Cacique Hatuey and the genocidal Spaniards on the island of Haiti and then Cuba. And on the second part, we will discuss the confessions of MAAT. Uh, and we will put MAAT in the context of people facing Osiris at the end of life. And what I have introduced a few years back, the idea for Haitians in particular, but others as well, facing Dessalines at the end of their journey on this side of existence. Okay, so yes, it's been in the news. Some of you might have noticed it. There were rumors all over the internet and media about the state of health of Mr. The Donald. And then he went on TV to debunk those rumors and say, I'm very much alive, and the news of his death are greatly exaggerated. And but we find some very fascinating news at the same time, such as published here. The idea that Donald Trump is actually doing fundraising, fundraising to secure his passage to heaven. It's a very weird thing, but in Newsweek, it was published this week that Donald Trump asked for $15 donations to get to heaven. So all of these things, the coincidence of, you know, him focusing on heaven at the same time that there's all kinds of rumors about his health being in very great danger, showing pictures of what seems to be a um, problematic skin condition that he's developing on his hand in some pictures. A number of things over the past few weeks is focusing on the health of Donald Trump. But this news item about the fundraising is quite peculiar. We hear that Trump's campaign email used the subject line, I want to try and get to heaven, presenting the former president's political victories and his survival of last year's attempted assassination as evidence of divine intervention and a purpose to make America great again. And of quote from the Newsweek article, Donald Trump asked for $15 donations to get to heaven. I encourage you to check this article. I find all of this quite um, amazing that Donald Trump, who is not known to be someone who is religious, although since his first mandate, we saw the white Christian nationalist, who some people consider to be religious people. Uh, I see them more like a political organization, just like the Ku Klux Klan. They carry Bibles as well and crosses. But anyways, so Donald Trump's statement here or behavior reminded me of a real historical situation involving one of the leaders of the island of Haiti in the early 1500s or late 1400s, according to a book written by Bartolomeo de las Casas, who is a priest, a Catholic priest, who accompanied Columbus in his rampage and genocidal attacks on the first peoples of the Caribbean, the Arawak speaking folks who inhabited Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, Borican, which the crazy Spaniards renamed Puerto Rico. Um, and apparently these people inhabited all the way to the Floridas in so-called mainland North America today, and so decimated completely um, just a few years after the arrival of the hordes from Spain, led by Christopher Columbus, with of course some survivors, uh, especially on the island of Borican, uh, we name Puerto Rico, and some other islands in the region. Uh, and it's very difficult because right now, without DNA analysis, uh, distinguishing between people who were the Arawak-speaking Tainos or the Caribs, after which the area is named. Apparently, they took First Nations people from all the way Mexico and brought them and introduced them in the Caribbean. So it's very difficult, when people are doing DNA testing right now. I mean, you can see trace of Native American, but you cannot always claim it to be specifically Taino or other people who inhabited specifically the islands of Haiti or Cuba or Borican. In any case, this encounter is important because it tells us what the thinking of these people were. We have some images from the Spaniards who were describing these people, but we have from Bartolomé de las Casas this very interesting quote here. This is supposedly uh, Cacica, that's the title of the leader. And for instance, the island of Haiti itself was divided into 5 cacicas. So that means it's a kingdom. Okay. So Cacique Hatuey is quoted here in Bartolomé de las Casas, a short account of the destruction of the Indies, which was written in 1542 and published in 1552, saying, "Here is the God the Spaniards worship. For these they fight and kill. For these they persecute us, and that is why we have to throw them into the sea. They tell us, these tyrants, that they adore a God of peace and equality, and yet they usurp our land and make us their slaves. They speak to us of an immortal soul and of their eternal rewards and punishments, and yet they rob our belongings, seduce our women, violate our daughters. Incapable of matching us in valor, these cowards cover themselves with iron that our weapons cannot break." Cacique, evidently, if what is reported here, and we have no reason to uh, believe that Las Casas was lying when he wrote these words, although we're not putting it past Las Casas that he could have lied. But specifically about this, we don't really see the motivation. But in those words, we can see that Atway was a very noble and brave man who did an assessment of the Spaniards that is very realistic. And you can tell that they were not amused by the behavior of the genocidal Spaniards. Now, Atwe reportedly was a cacique on the island of Haiti, and he was being persecuted by the Spaniards, and then he escaped and went to Cuba. And of course, if you know your map of the Caribbean, you can see that Cuba, this elongated piece of land here, okay, so the area of Santiago de Cuba is very close to the north and northwest tip of Haiti. Okay, this is the island of Haiti, currently occupied by the Republic of Haiti on the west and the Dominican Republic on the east. But the one island, which was land of the Arawak speaking Tainos, they named Haiti at different times. They named it Quisqueya or Boyo, according to some historians. But so apparently Hatuey was here on the island, and then he went to Cuba and was chased by the Spaniards. And it is when they got there that uh, the Spaniards were about to execute him. And this is the famous dialogue between Hatuey and the Spanish priest, reported by Bartolomeu de las Casas, who tells us Hatuey, thinking a little, asked the religious man if Spaniards went to heaven. The religious man answered yes. The chief then said, without further thought, that he did not want to go there, but to hell, so as to not be where they were, and where he would not see such cruel people. This is the name and honor that God and our faith has have earned. End of quote from Bartolomeu de las Casas. So of course, the scene here is that before executing, burning alive Cacique Hatuey, the Spaniards offered to baptize him. And then he asked the question, what happens when you baptize? And they started to say, yeah, if you baptize you go to heaven, if you're not you go to hell. And then he asked, where do the Spaniards go? And he says, wherever these guys go, I don't want to go there. And so when I heard about Trump's desire to buy himself a seat in heaven, I immediately thought about Cacique Hatuey, because I certainly wouldn't want to spend eternity in the company of Donald Trump. But more seriously, human beings have always had this preoccupation with, you know, questioning how valuable has my existence or my passage on earth been, right? This is the big question, because most human beings have accepted the idea that the most robust among us and the luckiest among us, because you could be robust and still get hit by a truck at an early age, right? But the most robust and luckiest among us might live to be 100 and something, but most of the time in very bad health, right? By the time we depart at such an old age. But the question is, what type of trail are we leaving behind? It's not, whether one day we're going to die. We all know this is guaranteed. Thou shalt die. Okay. But the question is, you know, how did you live while you were there? And so the ancient folks who were thinking about this, developed a concept whereby this preoccupation can turn into motivation for human beings to live correct lives. This is the concept of morality as it becomes codified in various societies. And of course, today, a few arrogant people pretend that, they have a God that has chosen to reveal to all of humanity through them, what that moral code is. But the evidence is that human beings over time in various societies develop these understandings on their own without any help for extraterrestrials, whether you call them Moses, God, Jesus, all of these things. I mean, that's, a particular um, ghetto of humanity that has developed these names, which they attribute to ideas and concepts that they stole from other people. But we've discussed that before in previous episodes. But here, I invite you to focus on the ancient Egyptians, also known as the Kemet people, the land of the blacks, those folks who, built some of these marvelous monuments that you can see today in Egypt. If you've been to the Giza Plateau and you see those 9 pyramids, okay, with the three biggest ones just staring at you at the Giza Plateau, it is just evident that the people who built this are people who've been thinking and analyzing the universe and develop some wicked skills, right, to do so, maths, physics, and everything, right. In any case, they also develop, that code of morality and spirituality called the MAAT. This idea that you are focusing on living right during your lifetime, in your interactions with human beings, in your interactions with, society, with nature, and with God. Okay, and that by doing so, you guarantee that on the last day, which the concept of judgment day, right? When you've died, well, when they're going to bring you in front of the great black, Osiris, you will be found to have a pure heart. And to illustrate the concept of a pure heart, the Comitians use the image of a feather you can see on the right side of the scale, whereas the deceased heart is put on the left side or the other side of the scale. And the concept is that your heart, if pure, will be so light that it will balance with a feather. It will be light as a feather. It's a concept of having a light heart, okay, a pure heart. And so they do this weighing of the heart as the deceased is taken on his way or on her way towards Osiris, who sits on his throne of judgment. I mean, of course, you recognize that the same idea is in Judeo Christianity, except that in Judeo Christianity, they, usurp the name of Osiris, the great black, and they put a white god with, blonde hair and whatever. And just like Osiris has his son Horus, this white god has his white Jesus son. But uh, all of these things are plagiarized from the ancient Egyptians. But what's important here is to note how human beings, groups of human beings, always considered it important to codify morality. And so in the next slide, you will see um, the what sometimes they call the 42 negative confessions of Mahat. Negative because the idea is that when you come in front of Osiris, you're going to say that I have not, committed adultery. I have not stolen what doesn't belong to me. I have not sullied the water, as is in, different numbers, because there's different numbering of the Mahat confessions in the book of Coming Forth by Day or Coming Forth by Night or the Book of the Dead, different appellations of the same book of papyrus. In any case, so in some books it is 42, in others it is 77. I think that's the highest number I've seen. But in any case, like when you're reading them, you can sense some repetition, or maybe things were lost in translation. It's not clear. However, some of them are evident in terms of their universal truths, things that have been adopted by societies probably independently across the planet, right? And so, if we take a look at those, what they also call the 42 admonitions of MAAT, right? This is from a particular source here, and we will guide you to where you can go and check them. There are various versions. Like I said, the numbering is not always the same, but here, I have not done iniquity, I have not robbed with violence, I have not stolen, I have done no murder, I have done no harm, I have not defrauded offerings, I have not breached obligations, I have not plundered the nectar, I have not spoken lies, I have not snatched away food, I have not caused pain, etc., etc. And I recall that I noted one of these a while back. I can't even look. I have not polluted myself. That's number 22. Uh, I have not caused terror, 23. I have not transgressed. Uh, so it's very much a set of admonitions which you can understand would help people um, live better. The one that attracted my attention here, it's number 35. I have never fouled the water. And I noted this a few years back because some of you might know I'm originally from Haiti, the island in the Caribbean that is currently occupied by foreigners from the United States, Canada, and Europe that took over the country in 2004 and used the United Nations troops to consolidate their coup and foreign occupation. And those United Nations troops, some of them arrived on the island infected with cholera. And so um, they sullied the Artibonite River, which is one of the major waterways or water source where people use for drinking water. They use this river, and so this caused a cholera outbreak, which led to the killing of over 50,000 Black Haitians. I specify Black Haitians because impoverished Haitians are dark in skin, and they live in the majority. I mean, this is 99% of Haitians, and they're the ones who don't have access to drinking water. So there's not a single white Haitian or light skinned Haitian who died of cholera. Okay, those people that they still call mulatto or whatever, they didn't die of cholera in Haiti because cholera doesn't kill you if you get access to clean water. And so this is a double disaster in the sense that first of all, it's the foreign troops that introduced the bacterium on the island when there was no cholera before their arrival. It's a invading force, illegal invading force, barbaric, that was also raping and killing people so that the United States can satisfy its imperialist desires. And of course, when we say the United States, unfortunately, Canada and France came along with them, right? And so it was interesting that the white supremacist forces that conducted this coup and invasion in Haiti sullied the water, caused the death of 50,000 Haitians and the contamination of 1 million of them. When Haitians went to the United Nations to try to sue them, um, they mobilized their lawyers and said, no, you cannot sue the United Nations. They're not responsible for what happened. And to this day, not a cent in reparation has been paid to the victims and their families. So it brought to my attention how, even according to MAAT, okay, the principles of justice that our ancient people observed, the United Nations criminals and those who led to these troops arriving in Haiti would be found guilty of having fouled the water. Confession number 35. Absolutely guilty as charged. So, of course, you can understand the importance of the Nile, right? I mean, it doesn't specifically say the Nile here. It says you haven't fouled the water, but you can understand the importance of the Nile for the people of ancient Egypt or Kemet. Yes, but the question is, yeah, once mightily arrogant men and women succumb to panic and tremble in front of death, while others remain stoic and dignified in trying situations. What makes the difference? Why is it some of us, when we are approaching death because of disease or old age, we start to panic and tremble, right? Whereas others find the courage that really most of us stand in awe observing. An example is, because I spoke about men of courage, but here it will be a woman of courage that I will give as the example, Lieutenant Sanit Belair. Indeed, she was a um, decorated army general, or sorry, lieutenant in the Haitian military, revolutionary military, which defeated the army of Napoleon Bonaparte, the only defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte in the Americas, right? When the Africans revolted in 1791 and continued the struggle all the way to victory on November 18, 1803. Well, this lady, Lieutenant Sanit Belair, when arrested alongside her husband, we hear in the reports of the history books the behavior that she adopted. Now, the picture you see here, I don't know if this picture has anything to do with Sanit Belair, but it was interesting that this is in modern day Haiti, where young people meet to gather for demonstrations. And indeed, many of them are facing possible death when they go on these demonstrations against the IMF, the World Bank, US imperialism, the puppets that the US imperialists have imposed on Haitians, all kinds of very criminal and barbaric individuals who can attempt at their lives and who do, as happens in Kenya with Samuel Ruto, the stooge of imperialism, etc. Well, these men and women, they find inspiration in brave women who have also stood throughout the history of humankind on all continents. But here we're focusing on people of African descent because our argument is indeed that not enough is said to commemorate, to share the history of these men and women. And that's why we propose that all current Christian churches be transformed into remembré centers, or centers where people are going to learn about the history of Lieutenant Sanit Belair, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Shaka Zulu, Winnie Madikileza Mandela, Tupac Amaru, all of these brave men and women who stood in all societies for what which is right, right? Like the brave white man in the United States, John Brown, who stood against the white supremacist racist slavery system that the United States government encouraged, and they murdered him in December 1859. And so it is said that at her capture, when threatened with beheading, she successfully asserted the right to an honorable soldier's death by musketry, and standing before their muzzles, cried, Vive liberté, à bas esclavage. Long live freedom, down with slavery. She refused to be blindfolded, and the executioner was unable to get her to bend her back and place her head on the block. The officer commanding the detachment was obliged to have her shot. This is Donald Trump should read this, right? Instead of collecting $15 here and there so that he could get a seat in heaven, Donald Trump should read what Lieutenant Sanit Belair, this black woman, yeah, Donald, a black woman, she should inspire you and tell your brothers and sisters in the white Christian nationalist clan that examples of courage are to be found all over the planet. Right. And so I will use this final slide to say that yes, just as the ancient Egyptians or the Cometians had the idea of facing Osiris, the great black, at the end of life, and to make their case that they have done everything possible to live a righteous life. We penned this article a few years back titled A Single MAAT Confession for All Haitians. Dessalines, who was a dark black man, according to most of the reports, was quite annoyed when, after liberating Haiti, he found that many of the blacks who were free for several generations or several years or decades had in mind that they were going to cling to all of the properties that the whites had or their fathers had on account that they had property rights like documents, whereas the masses of Africans who were enslaved on those plantations had no papers. They did not even possess a last name. Everything was stolen from them, including the breast milk of their mother, who often had to watch them suffer hunger, deprivation, while some white child or even white adult was suckling the milk that rightfully belongs to the black child. And so Dessalines is said to have issued this statement with regards to what we need to do when faced with this inequality, which continued after that the Europeans were chased out of the island, whereby the light-skinned mulattoes, Quateron, whatever they named themselves, and blacks who also were among the privileged, um, held to the land and refused the agrarian reform that he stated was essential, necessary for us to move forward as a nation, and said, what will they have, those whose fathers are in Africa? He made this statement in 1804, right? It's evident. Like, you cannot just take all of this land and take it for yourself. Uh, these people were toiling that land, making it rich, making it produce all of these generations, and they have nothing. Like the concept of the 40 acres and a mule that they promised the Africans in America, and as soon as they claimed the emancipation, they didn't give them the 40 acres and a mule. Meanwhile, the government spent billions of dollars helping whites getting a leg up, a leg up, a leg up, a leg up again and again and again to this day. This is what Donald Trump is doing today. And so, on my first trip to Africa, where in fact I was in Kemet, near the pyramid of Djoser. This is the so-called step pyramid. On one of the blocks, I took the freedom of indulging in some graffiti. Okay, because I saw a number of people writing Peter and Julie were there, and since I wasn't with Julie, and I don't think if I was with Julie, this would be what I would be wanting to write on the walls of pyramids. In any case, it on one of those walls, and it's not something permanent. I just inscribed the name of our noble Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Haiti, a way of paying homage to our great ancestor, and to say that just as our ancestors in Africa built pyramids of stone to illustrate the might, the intelligence, um, the power of their civilization, Jean-Jacques Dessalines built a pyramid of humanity, of civility, bringing us out of the period of racial enslavement. This is nothing short of a pyramid. As Jesus came, according to the Christians, he didn't abolish slavery. In fact, one of the first slave ships was named the Jesus of Lubeck. Muhammad of the Muslims came, he did not abolish slavery, right? The Jews, forget about it. They actually were instrumental in the kidnapping, capturing, and transporting of Africans. And so the slave ships involve Jews, Muslims, Christians that are both Catholic and Protestant. So nobody said anything about racial slavery until the Africans rose. And again, I always remind people that no, they did not rise only in Haiti. Everywhere from the shores of Africa during the travel, in Suriname, in Brazil, in Jamaica, everywhere, men and women rose in order to liberate themselves. And that's why we want to spend time acknowledging Yaya Nana Ya Santewa, the Maroon leaders of Jamaica, okay? The those who were in South America. We want to take the time to identify the names of Zumbi and tell their stories because they lived for real. Contrary to imaginary Jesus, imaginary Mary, and all of these, blonde hair, blue eye, fake people, we have real ancestors that we must honor. And so we say the single MAAT confession I consider essential for all Haitians is to face Dessalines on Judgment Day and say confidently, Father, I have done everything in my power to ensure the resources of Haiti are shared equitably among all of its children, particularly those whose fathers were in Africa on January 1st, 1804. I encourage you to check out the article. It's on my website, jafrikayiti.com. And so the few slides that I share with you here. And yeah, tonight we might take a call or two if you call on WhatsApp at 613-482-2549. I could take one or two calls. A few references: Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony Broder, and this sister's blog, In the Spirit of Hatuey, which summarizes some of the quotes that I mentioned here. There's the actual book by Bartolomeu de las Casas, a short account of the destruction of the Indies. And on Wikipedia, you'll find information about Sanit Belair. And on my website, a single MAAT confession for Haitians is one of the references. And of course, you can go on my website. You will find some information in English, in French, and in Haitian Creole. We have a few comments here. I say greetings to our sister Marie-Nadine Pierre, right to right, Ronald Laborde. Greetings, brothers and sisters. We have a comment or a question here. Jafrikayiti in I Avenged America, Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Haiti's Fight for Freedom. Dr. Julia Garfield wrote that Lieutenant Sanit was married to General Belair, General Toussaint Louverture's nephew. Yeah, indeed. Yes, her husband, Charles Belair, is the person who was um, executed alongside Lieutenant Sanit Belair. And yes, there are family connections, as you can imagine, on the slave plantations, even when it wasn't happening naturally. Um, it happened because of the conditions of enslavement. There were places where a black male who was, very strong was simply put in a house and crossed with women all day, just like they do to mules, to horses, cows, etc. So those are the conditions that define the murderers, the barbarians who had kidnapped our ancestors. They do not speak to who they were, because even though physically they were subjected to these conditions, they rose in humanity. And I really encourage folks to go and read some of the things that these ancestors are recorded to having said. It's amazing how these people manage to not only fight to free themselves, but articulate the desire not to become like the monsters who were butchering them. It's anyway, if you read the declarations of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and it's all that. Okay, and this is why Marco de Semeruelos, who occupied the island of Cuba, was complaining to his fellow Spaniards in Madrid, saying, "Do not let the declarations of Dessalines reach the island of Cuba, because it's not appropriate for other blacks who are enslaved in Cuba to hear those proclamations, because Dessalines is telling us that we are shit." Okay, and that he is offering a superior way of being, and he was. So yes, indeed, this is quite amazing. Yeah, yeah. And so, greetings, Ronald Laborde, who says bonsoir tout le monde. Moi, salut tout frère. Right to right, yes, the family has gathered. And so, folks, does that mean you are going to let me have this conversation with myself here and you're not going to dial the number? I remind you, I know some of you Haitians, you can be very brave in everything, but you don't want people to hear you speaking English with an accent, as if, you know, the other people you care about, as if they can speak Creole without an accent, as if they can speak Creole at all, with or without accent. In any case, I would say if you guys are hesitating because of accents and whatever, I really wish you would not, and dial the number 613 Let me just go here and put the banner again, because tonight we do have a few minutes. Oh, I find it here in Creole. I don't find the English version, but in any case, you understand it's the phone number. You just dial these numbers and you'll be able to participate in the program. And I would be very happy to. Oh, there it is. So this program is every Wednesday at 7 p.m. So please use WhatsApp, right? If you use WhatsApp and you dial 613-482-2549, I would be able to entertain your comments. Um, I mentioned several times on this program before that on my website, for those of you who have family and friends who are Haitians, it's a very good idea to give them this gift. Yes, this particular gift. What is it? This is, yeah, it's a pen. You can write with it, yes, but it's also a USB key, 64 gigs, so that means it has lots of space. But what's in there is my book, Vive Bon Dieu à ba religion, and the La Fime CDs. Yes, going to heaven, the concept of eternity. Science is also progressing and giving us some very interesting information these days, right? About how the multiverse. We're starting to get a better glimpse of the possibility of time being not so fixed as we understand it to be, and that perhaps in the way we are as human beings, we might really be able to have existence beyond this current existence, but it's not in the dimension and in the way we currently experience it. Anyway, there are all kinds of interesting stuff, but all of this is not reassuring folks like Donald Trump, right? Because these guys don't want to take any chances, right? And so if they can prolong it as it currently is, and to be president while he is 90, and this makes me smile because I remember how critical some of these very folks were of Robert Mugabe when the elder comrade was, really way too old to still be president of Zimbabwe. But when you compare him in terms of how he was behaving with how these fools are behaving, Robert, sounded intelligent and articulate and not a threat to humanity, contrary to this crazy man in Washington this week. In any case, going to heaven is a preoccupation for some folks, but they don't seem to consider the approach that the ancient Egyptians had suggested as being a good way to ensure, a good eternity. These are not bad ideas. Yeah, I think they were pretty cool in terms of concepts. The principles of MAAT, right? I mean, uh, you know, that's something good to consider, to not do inequity, to not commit violence, to not steal, right? Including going to Venezuela to steal the people's petroleum. Thou shalt not do that, Donald, if you want to go to heaven. That's all I had to share with you, brothers and sisters. I wish you all a pleasant week. Don't forget, for those of you who understand Haitian Creole, we have our appointment every Sunday at noon. Oh, yeah, Eric, the son of Donald, is also thinking about being president. What a wonderful world indeed.
Women should remain silent in the churches. They are not allowed to speak, but must be in submission, as the law says. If they want to inquire about something, they should ask their own husbands at home. For it is disgraceful for a woman to speak in the church.
Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites.
Jésus, par ton sang précieux, enlève mon iniquité. Regarde-moi sur les cieux, dis-moi que tu m'as pardonné. J'ai longtemps erré cœur rebelle, mais j'entends ta voix qui m'appelle. Au pied de ta croix maintenant, tout confus, brisé, je me rends. Blanc, blanc, plus blanc que neige, blanc, blanc, plus blanc que neige, lavé dans le sang de l'agneau, je serai plus blanc que la neige.
Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. 1 Samuel 15.